Hi, it's Neil Sean here on Your Entertainment News. Now, I'm with a very special young man today, the gorgeous Danny Rogers, who has got a brand new production out called Been and Gone. It's a tribute to his late great father, the wonderful comedian, Mr. Ted Rogers. Remember though, Danny?
If you miss it, you miss out.
Don't miss Danny today on Your Entertainment News. Danny, thanks so much for being my guest today. And for those that don't know, you are, of course, the son of one of my all-time favourite comedians. Say who?
Ted Rogers, no, thank you.
He's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. But, of course, you are brilliant in your own right. But you've got this show that you're putting out together. Now, tell me about that. What's it called, first of all?
Well, it's called Been and Gone. So it's, yes.
Good title.
So, yeah, sums it up perfectly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of different to a normal show. So at the moment we've had sort of tribute shows to like Morecambe and Wise and Tommy Cooper and things. So in that aspect it's different because it's not just like an actor portraying my father, it's actually me in that aspect, but it's sort of from a different perspective in the fact that I sort of talk about my dad's life as well as how it's affected me and what's happened after my dad passed away to where I am now, essentially.
Because you would have been very young, wouldn't you? I mean, I just realised, you know, when he died. I mean, you're how old are you now?
28.
You're only a baby, you see.
Oh, thank you.
But I could see your father all over you, you know what I mean? Your expressions and everything like that. For me, you know, obviously my generation, we remembered him in that brilliant, I thought it was brilliant, quiz show, 3, 2, 1. But did he ever show you or tell you how he did the thing? I could never do that.
We'll practice now. Have you got a few hours?
Because I remember him telling me, oh, no, it's quite easy, but you know the way he did it, it was like, you know, and you're like, oh, could you do that again, Ted? You know?
Well, it was strange because I remember we used to have races to do it, but I actually don't remember him teaching me. But obviously I wouldn't be his son if I couldn't do it.
Yeah. So. And then, but it was like that was a visual catchphrase though, wasn't it? When you think about it now, you know, he was, I mean, just to recap, the show had like 20 million viewers. It was huge. Everybody watched that show. What were your memories of it growing up? Did you think it was fun and the bin wheeled on it?
Well, it was strange because since I was born after 3, 2 and had come off air, so I watched it with my dad on Challenge.
Yeah.
So I think I only started to get a grasp of what was happening really, and obviously I took to Dusty Bin like all the children did. And
I had one.
Oh, did you?
You could buy them. I don't know if you know that, but you could buy them. That was probably the first time I'd seen merchandising from a TV thing.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Where you went into a shop and you thought, oh, you can buy that then. So I nattered for one and I got one.
Oh, good stuff. Well, yeah. Well, my dad bought one of the 3 bins, so he sort of stayed in my bedroom as a little momentum. But I used to watch Challenge with my dad, and we would try and he would go to me, do you know what that clue means? And I'd be like, the car? He went, well, your guess is as good as mine, I don't know. So it was quite hilarious really to sort of try and work them out because they were, the clues were just completely off the wall, really.
Yeah, it wasn't like you had to have some brains, I thought, to be on it. You know, like, I quite like Sale of the Century and said, is that a car? Or it was a car. It's quite simple. But I thought 3, 2, 1 was slightly more intelligent, wasn't it, when you think about it, looking back? Was he proud, though, of the show? Because he must have been himself. It was such a phenomenal hit for him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it made him to a household name, so he really did enjoy doing it. I think the only slight part which he found was difficult was that people who'd grown up of that era in the 80s just knew my dad as a game show host, but not as a comedian. So for getting his name out there was brilliant, but to show off his other sort of talents and things, it was a lot trickier in that aspect.
Well, he was such a talented man. I mean, I met him briefly a few times at Yorkshire TV, and I said to you in the green room, he was always brilliantly dressed, very dapper, very smart, oozed showbiz glamour to me. But what I do remember about him is being a very topical comedian, you know, and maybe, you know, when you think about it now, we were saying this, that he obviously picked stories from the newspapers and turned it into funny, which is an art form in itself. But he was so successful as a comedian. But what was he a typical comedian as a father? Was he on and then quite dark off camera? And,
no,
you know
I mean he was always happy around us. I remember we were staying in a hotel, funny enough, and he always had a comb because he always, as you said, he always wanted to look immaculate. And he had a comb in his back pocket, and he was on the phone and just sitting on the bed, so I had to borrow the comb and do my hair. And then I popped in his back pocket. And we went down to have breakfast, and there's people around us. And he said, well, do you want any like apple juice or orange juice? I said, oh, yes, please. And he put his coat on the back end of the chair. And when he stood up, the comb had hooked the goat, and he dragged it one way. What's wrong? And he turned round, and it followed him like a tail. And I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but I was just in fits of laughter.
As a kid, you find that funny, don't you? Your parents slightly being embarrassing, but funny at the same time. So, but you yourself have a lot of similarities, because I know your father was a camp entertainer at Butlins.
Yes.
And you've done similar things, you know. So tell me about that. How did you get into the business then yourself? Because you're very talented, Danny, but how did you get into it?
Oh, thank you. Where do you want the check?
No, you are. You know, I've seen your stuff.
Well, I started, I did actually do work experience at Butlins when I was 16. Wow. Sort of giving out flyers and meeting and greeting people at the front doors, but because of my age I wasn't allowed to see the evening entertainment, sadly. But then I worked at a Warner Leisure Hotel in Hayling Island.
Yeah.
So, but it was brilliant because that training, essentially, it gives you all the skills right to your fingertips, and you've got an audience there. You can trial
Captive.
anything. Yes, yes.
You're not going.
You're not going anywhere, you hope. But no, so you get to do, I mean, I got to do my own act of like songs and a few jokes in this and the other for about 45 minutes or so before they went into dinner or after the main entertainment had finished. So it was quite nice because you get to make a rapport with people and you can see what works and what doesn't work. Which is difficult because I think with this business, it's the venues have slightly changed in that aspect. So that sort of training for an entertainer was certainly a good training ground for me, and I know that my dad essentially said that Butlins was brilliant because it gave him all those skills to his fingertips. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of people like Des O'Connor, lots of people, didn't they, had their break in Butlins, and then I think most of them admit that if you can battle that audience, really anybody's quite game after that.
That's it, yes. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
It's true, isn't it? And I was reading also about your father that one of his big breaks was, which is another genre you've taken to, was in pantomime at the Coliseum in London. He took over when Tommy Steele, I think, broke his ankle or something like that.
That's right, yes.
And I mean, that must have been, in that era, you know, late 50s, a colossal break for somebody like that, because he's not quite hit it yet, you know, he's, you know what I mean? But he's got that. He struck me, your dad, as somebody who was, I don't mean this rudely, but a typical old-time vaudeville star that no matter what knocked him down, he just got back up and went to the next thing, whatever that might be. You know what I mean? Yeah. Is that your memory of him as such?
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't. I mean, I think he set a brilliant example as the fact that if anything knocked him, it wouldn't matter. He would still keep going, and he set on a really, really good legacy for myself and for anybody else. A great lesson to learn by, really, in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, it's unheard of in some aspects nowadays, I think, for an understudy to take on like a lead name.
And he was like the Justin Bieber of his day, Tommy Steele. You know what I mean, in that period. So when you think about it was brave of the production team to say, well, put the comedian in. You know, you could have just drafted in Dickie Valentine as well, you know what I mean? But you know what I'm saying? It was a big thing. And so when did you realise he was famous? How old were you at that point where you thought, why does everybody know my dad?
I think, funny enough, I think it wasn't until my dad had done some commercials for McDonald's in January 2000. And I think that kind of hit to me because my dad was sort of every 5 minutes or so he was sort of being pushed out on TV type thing. But I was quite naughty in the fact that he was in the shower and I joked and went, oh, you're on TV. And he quickly hushed up and went, any joking? Went, oh, you. And literally he went back into the bathroom and I kid you not, 5 seconds later, it was on. I said, no, you are on. He said, oh, yeah. I went, no, seriously, you are on now. It's like, and he did catch him and that's God punishing you for that. So I was like, okay, fair enough. But yeah, I think that kind of sprung it to me in some aspects. And I think, as I sort of grow a bit older, I mean, he was the last comedian personally asked by Bing Crosby to do his last ever world tours. And that was working with Perry Como. So, I mean, that people, again, for 3, 2, 1, nobody knew what my dad had done before in that aspect. And that's quite surreal as I grow up now and go, gosh, someone like Bing Crosby, like personally,
I mean, just megastars, aren't they? You know, when you think about that, just the words Perry Como and Bing Crosby say, that is A-list.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and was he nervous? Do you know? Because can you imagine how nerve-wracking it is? It's all very well. Then you go, that's brilliant. Then you have to think, oh, got to do that.
Well, it was funny because he was working he was co-host at the Royal Variety Performance in 1974.
I remember watching that on TV. Yes,
Oh, yes?
I do. Yes, yeah.
Well, he literally just come off stage and a fella said, "Hey kid, walk this way." So he followed the gentleman through and he took him into dressing room number 1, where Perry Como was. And he turned around and said, "Look, I'm doing a tour in spring, will you do it?" And my dad famously said, "Well, what do you say to Como?" No. Which he said after the tour, he said, "Look, I won't forget you, Ted." Which he said, "Oh, okay, that's nice."
Because people do say that, don't they?
Yes.
And then you think, yeah, you try not to be excited because it might not happen. You know, so he must have been floating, but then until the contract came, like, will he remember me? You know, that sort of thing. Wow.
But then a few months later, he got a phone call saying, "Is that Ted Rogers? Bing Crosby in San Francisco." So he immediately went, "Oh, don't give us that, who is it?" and it was him, but lucky enough he didn't understand what he was talking about, thank goodness, and sort of said, "Well, look, Como says you're the person I got to work with. I'm coming over, I don't just want you to do your act. Do you sing?" He said, "Well, yes, well, I want to do a song with you and I want to do a double with you, like I do with Bob Hope." So it's just like, yeah, of course. But it's crazy because, I don't know, nowadays, you would think that it would be an agency ringing an agency rather than personal phone call. And obviously, I think that's obviously why I thought, well, I'm just getting stitched up here. This isn't happening.
It's spot on there, Danny, because I think older acts at that time, they knew what they wanted. So they would just go and do that. Whereas now, somebody would say, "Oh, call so-and-so," and then it gets diluted. I think if you get them together, they know whether they're going to work or not, you know. And was that a career highlight for him then? I mean, it must have been, you know.
I mean, I know that because he had a picture of him and Bing Crosby, which was personally signed to Ted Thanks Bing, that quite happily sat on the mantelpiece, and I think that to him was his main, like, I've cracked it type thing, really.
And when did you ever tell him that you wanted to go into the business? And what was he, head in hands, thinking, "Oh no," you know? Because some parents are. My parents were very supportive.
"Oh no, I've been through
Get
it.
a proper job, Danny."
Yeah, exactly. No, I suppose from a young age, I always wanted to be like a mini Ted Rogers. I mean, I remember like being in my suit and doing this type of thing, and he was very like proud, and he would like always in the car, because Danny Kaye was his idol, hence why I'm called Danny. So he would always have like the Danny Kaye tapes in the car and things. And since he would do it all the time, I kind of rehearsed them as well. And then he would go, "Oh yeah, no, change that, and then make that a bit slower, and this, that, and the other." So I always used to watch him in the wings. And I used to mimic him, so he'll be on stage, and there'll be me in the wings doing his act at the same.
It's nice though, that, isn't it? Yeah, I had I was lucky to have very similar experiences, because you just know, you're thinking, "That's working well," but that's not, and then you can almost critique them. Terrible when you're a kid, because they're thinking, "Shut up!" It's a tough audience. Oh, that was nice. And so then that came away, and you said there was no other option that you thought show business is for me.
No, it was always embedded. Like, I loved, especially sort of summer seasons and pantos, because one, I'd be out of school, and then what was nice was that I remember in pantomime he was very open. He would like say, "Oh yeah, you can sit in the wings, but make sure you're not in the way," and "Oh, is it all right if Danny pushes this button that makes the oven blow up in the kitchen scene," and this, that, and the other. So it was nice that he involved me, and the people around the company sort of, you're just like an 8-year-old boy.
Who do you remember meeting them when you're this young boy and your dad's the star of, say, a panto or summer's evening? Who were around him at that point? Because there would be big names as well, wouldn't they?
Well, I remember in summer season he worked with, in Weymouth, it was with Bonnie Langford and Bernie Clifton.
Oh, I mean, Bernie Clifton, very funny man. I love Bonnie Langford, so talented, such a talented girl, isn't she?
Well, they're lovely, both of them are lovely. I caught up with Bonnie a few years ago, and Bernie not that long ago as well, and Bernie was very nice. He let me be a part of his act. It was quite funny. He had like a crossover period, and he had a dog on a lead, and I thought it'd be hilarious to be in my Chelsea strip, just to randomly walk across, giving the dog a little walk type thing.
I've seen that bit of the act. It's very funny, isn't it? It's hard to explain, but it's funny. I think that's the beauty about that era's comedy. You can't explain it, but when you sit in there, in the confines of a wonderful theatre, it's funny. And people do laugh, and you think, "Wow!" So who else did you sort of meet when you were a child and around him?
I remember we had a Warrior. I think he was one. I remember he gave me a haircut, which is quite funny. And my sister's like, "God, that's a real buzz cut, isn't it?" At the back. I went, "Yeah, but it's all right. It's nice." I remember sitting on Michelle Collins's Nee, bless her, she had some patience. I was, because since my birthday is at Christmas time, I was showing her all my toys, and she was being very patient, going, "Oh yeah, that's really nice." So she must have thinking, "Oh goodness, it's a
Just
cool
go
yet."
away,
Yeah. Bless her. So she was very patient with me, but I don't know, it become sort of
The norm.
surreal, the norm, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And your mum, of course, was in show, so it's obviously ingrained. So your mum was a ballet dancer and then a Bluebell girl, is
That's
that right?
right, yes.
So what were her memories of that time? I mean, how did they meet then? Was it a typical show business connection?
Well, it's a bit hazy because my mum, because of her health and things, she can't remember everything. So what I've heard is that when my dad was working in Blackpool,
The Mecca of show business.
the Mecca
at
of show,
that time,
that's
yeah,
it,
yeah.
yes. I think they met at a party, and their eyes like met across the room, and they both like sort of fell in love. But what was funny was that my dad mainly chased my mum to begin with, and
That's the way it should be.
that's the way it should be, yes. But what was funny was she wasn't really that impressed at the time because she didn't know who he was. So he was really like sort of trying, but it was a slow, gentlemanly pursuit.
Yeah.
And it was nice because I found like the love letters that he had sent her and things like that. And it's amazing to sort of see how the unlikely relationship sort of blossomed in that
Yeah.
aspect. And then, yeah, they sort of ended up sort of doing shows together and this, that and the other, really. But I think she worked with Ken Dodd, I think, before she worked with my dad and this, that and the other.
Gosh.
But no, he was a lovely man. I think I do remember Ken like saying, "Oh, your dad loved your mum very much."
Oh, and
Which
of
was
course
sweet.
we recently lost Ken, and he was such a nice man, Ken, wasn't he? People, I think when you're comedians, they forget that you have got another side, and he had a very caring nature. I thought Ken Dodd, sweet man.
What I always found is that he's just done 4 hours solid.
Yeah.
But as soon as you met him afterwards, he still had the energy in life, and he was still happy to give you the time and energy to say, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you doing this? Yes, keep at it, keep doing this." And it was just time, it just didn't matter to him, which was a joking thing in itself. But
It's
he
true
would
though,
happily,
isn't it? I think he must have got up late though, because he always, in my view, Ken, I always imagine him getting up about 2 o'clock and breakfast might be 4. And, do you know what I mean? I think he lived in the twilight world of show business, where I don't think really he would have been wandering around at 8 a.m. looking for a paper. A different planet. So apart from Danny Kaye, who inspired your father? Do you know who did he find funny?
I know. Well, he liked the American comics, so I think that's why with American sort of singers and things, I think that's why they quite liked him in that aspect, because he liked the way they worked. So I think he had tapes of like Don Rickles and he liked sort of Bob Hope and sort of characters like that, really.
He did have an American style, your dad, didn't he? I thought sort of very smooth, and the way he came on stage, I saw him live a few times and obviously watched him on TV, but he never seemed to be nervous. Was he a nervous performer? But he didn't seem it, he sort of glided on a bit,
Well, it's funny because, I mean, amazing to say is that from working in this industry now is that I get to work with people who did work with my dad, which is weird in itself in some aspects, but they always say, "Oh yeah, your dad was always like in the wings, like double checking stuff and always like nervous and like saying, oh, is that the right line that we've written?" type thing. So yeah, apparently he was always, but then obviously as soon as he started, then I think he was like, right, okay, I've got the first laugh, now I can off I go.
It's like all comedians though, isn't it? It's the 30 seconds from the wing to the microphone is terrifying, because if you don't get them within those seconds, it can be pretty rough, can't it, I think?
Well, it was funny because when he was touring with Bing Crosby, they were, I think, in Las Vegas or somewhere in America, and he was obviously Richard Nixon was the Watergate scandal, so that was the topicality of the day. And they was making a lot of topical jokes saying that Richard Nixon was the only president lying in state while he was still alive. And
he's a funny guy.
But he's making all these jokes, and then he noticed that his daughter Trisha was sitting on the front row, which apparently is quick fire delivery sort of faltered ever so slightly.
Could put you off a bit, couldn't it? Like, whoops,
But I think she took to it to good days. I didn't think that any worse had come out of it. Thank goodness. But,
and you mentioned, of course, him co-hosting the brilliant Royal Variety Show. That's the pinnacle for. There's two things, I think: the Palladium and a Royal Variety Show. If you're a comedian and a performer, what did he talk to you about? How big a deal that was? Because when that was on in that period, everything stopped. Everybody watched it. It's not so much now. It's almost like a plug, I think, on TV. You know, you kind of think, oh, who wants to watch them? You know what I mean? But, you know, I think when it was that era and, you know, you see all of those, because stars came over, didn't they, from the US just to be on it.
That's right.
And it was a big event to be, you know, associated with. Did he ever talk to you about what it was like to do that? You know, because that must have been phenomenal for him, you know.
I think so. From what I can gather, I think obviously quite nervous in the fact that this is I've made it type thing, because he did Sunday night. He did host the last series of Sunday night at London Palladium.
Massive show again.
Yes. So he took over from Jim Dale with that. So I think obviously for him it felt like, oh gosh, things are starting to go my way type thing really now.
Did he? Because he struck me as being a very people's person as well. Did he like being recognised in the public and all that sort of thing?
I think so, but I think a bit of both really. I think he liked to be, when he could be private, he would be private obviously. But I think he did joke actually. His best friend of his, who was a polo commentator, Terry Hanlon. They used to sort of sit and have like a cup of coffee or something. They used to joke and turn to the people next to him and go, doesn't he look a lot like Ted Rogers? And then they used to look and go, oh yeah, he does, yes. And then after he'd leave and go, see you later, and they'll go, oh, it is.
That's sweet though, isn't
it? So you sort of have a good sense of humour in that aspect.
It's funny, you mentioned earlier on about the brilliant Bernie Clifton, and of course he's just appeared on Last Laugh in Vegas, and you mentioned your father had done that. But if your father was around now, would you think he'd have gone in for something like that? If they'd have invited him? Because wouldn't he have just floored them, you know, with his humour and his style? I was thinking maybe that's the sort of person they're missing in the lineup. You know, somebody that's more of an international flavour than you know. I mean, I love Cannonball and all that. Don't get me wrong, but there's something slightly missing in the programme. I think, you know.
I think because as we said, that his style was quite Americanised. So in that aspect, I don't see it be different. But from talking earlier, with the fact that it's different with the newspapers and things of my dad's material, I don't know how that would cross over. I'm not too sure. It'd be amazing to sort of see. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely one in that category, no question about it, who's in the lineup for the Last Laugh, certainly. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he were around today, how he would translate in that.
That's the beauty, though, of living in our digital age, isn't it? Because you can watch him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Years ago, you think about it, and that was that, and then you hope people remembered you. But these people are very much alive and kicking thanks to the digital age. And do you get people coming up to you saying, "Oh, I loved him in this," or "I watched him at that"? You must get a lot of that when they find out who you are.
Well, yeah, it's quite weird, because if you say it to Joe Bloggs, for instance, if they've lost their parents or what have you, it's a shame because they haven't got all that footage. That's what's strange is the fact that the person can kind of live on in that aspect, even though they're not around. But yeah, especially working at Warner Leisure hotels, because it's mainly the over 50s, some are slightly younger. And they grew up watching
teenagers is what I call them.
That's it, yes.
Over 50s are simply new teenagers in my book.
Yeah. But it's lovely because they sort of come up to you and go, yeah, I used to love watching your dad and this, that and the other. And then some people say, oh yeah, I watched him or Sunday night I played him, or I watched him in a live show who featured this person. So it's nice to hear these sort of different stories. I mean, sometimes you will get, oh, I didn't really like the programme, which you're like, that's fair enough. That, you know, it's just
they probably watch it every week. You know, they always say that. No, I've never watched that. And you think, oh no, but you know everything, So about you then, Danny. So now you're performing currently at Cabaret World. Is that right?
Yes.
How long are you there for then? How does that work?
So I've literally just finished doing the Easter. So I'm doing 3 weeks solid. And now I've got 2 more weekends, this weekend and next weekend. And then I don't get back there till July. But in between that, I'm obviously been a gone at the Brighton Fringe Festival. But I'm also one of the presenters for the Sooty Show.
Oh, we love Sooty.
I know, which is a great honour. So I have to sort of pinch myself and go, gosh, I'm with everybody's favourite yellow bear. This is surreal.
I ended up talking to Sweep when he came in like a real person. You start to worry, you know. Did you think, oh, okay, and then what am I doing?
but I mean, it is. You just don't. I don't know. You believe in that aspect, and it's amazing, really.
Yeah.
They're just iconic, but I mean, it's similar with Dusty Bin. People refer to it as a him, but it's just a bin.
Yeah, we had Basil Brush in, and I was very disappointed when he left because they just stuffed him in a backpack and his brush was sticking out the back. And I was thinking, that's Basil Brush. Some respect, you know. But I think it's what you grew up with, isn't it? You know, it's that sort of thing. And so, when do you start with Sooty? Are you across the summer with him?
Yes. So we tour in Park Resorts in August.
Oh, lovely.
So yeah, we get to go over there because last year we toured around Pontins, which was nice. So yeah, we get to do that run around August, which is very much looking forward
and
to.
So it must be almost like reliving, you know, your dad's life because you are literally doing what he did with he probably worked with Sooty, I'm sure. I bet he was on 3, 2, 1. You know, so do you sometimes feel that when you're doing this and think, oh, this is how he would have lived, sort of thing?
Yeah. So in some aspects, you're kind of, I suppose in a weird way, you're kind of living his sort of career in that aspect.
He'd be very proud of you though, wouldn't he, now? You know, because you are doing exactly, because you probably told him when you were a young boy, I want to do this, and things are really moving for you, so it's quite nice. Are you doing Panto as well also?
There's talks of this year, nothing's finalised just yet, but no, I love pantomime. I really love it because, well, I think especially from like the memories with my dad, but I think because it's the first time that children get to see a live show. First time that they get influenced. I mean, it certainly influenced me. In sort of wanting to go in the business and watch live theatre, really. But I think
can be daunting though, Panto, when they boo you, can't it? Especially when you're not meant to be.
Exactly. Yes. If you're the comic and get booed, oh dear, or the principal boy.
Yeah. Because when you try and explain Panto to Americans, you say, well, the boy's played by a girl, and there's 2 drag queens as the sisters, and you know what I mean. And you're trying to say, and they go, oh right. And it must be daunting when you bring an American into that format, because although they've got vaudeville, it's not quite the same. Is it, you know?
I mean, I suppose that's what the beauty of it is. It's a British heritage, really. That's what's nice about it. I mean, I know now Panto seems to be taken off quite well because it also seems to happen Easter as well as summer now. So it's getting quite popular in that aspect. But no, I love it, especially you can ad-lib around the story, and they love it when something goes wrong. They don't want it to go right. As soon as it goes wrong, they just love it.
But in my case, I never learnt the script. But so whatever happens.
Whatever goes.
Give us a clue.
Any guesses? Page 3. Thanks.
And you touched on before that you'd worked with one of my favourite Panto producers, the late great Dougie Chapman. What was he like for you? Because he was, to me, was like a typical impresario. It was what you imagined every agent to be, wasn't he? You know, the 12-foot cigar, the rings, the gold, and you're thinking, all right.
Yes. Well, he's from that classic era, really. That classic era of the good old, variety days, really. There's so much. I think that's the beauty to be able to have done a show that he produced, is the fact that he's lived through it and he's lived and breathed it, really. So when you feel you're part of that, you really feel like, I've kind of cracked it in some aspects, and like, I've made something of myself to be part of this production, as it were, really. But no, just an amazing character, really.
You'll never forget him.
No.
So fast forward, finally, because we haven't got too long, but fast forward, what are your goals? What are your dreams? What would you really like to do? If somebody could say, Danny, tomorrow I'm going to wave a wand and you could be this, what would it really be?
I think my absolute dream would, like any performer, would be able to perform at the London Palladium. I think from my dad performing there, and especially he hosted a show that was there, and I remember him taking me at the end when everything had cleared. He pointed, went, "That's where I stood to watch Danny Kaye live," and it was quite special to me that he sort of showed me that, really, and I think. From all those artists that have played there, there's so much history. I mean, it's not, you compare it to some theatres, it's not that big, but it doesn't matter. That's
There's something
the Mecca.
about it, isn't there? I know what you mean. I stood there and looked out, and it was thankfully full in the evening. And you think, I hope people turn up. but it is a night. And I don't know what it is about that venue, but maybe it is because everybody has been there. Wasn't that? Did you think your dad was telling you things though? Because that is a beautiful thing what you just said then about how he told you where he was, and then he was able to. You were so lucky for him to be able to show you that. You know what I mean? Those moments, because it is touching, isn't it? You look back and think, I
think he definitely wanted me to go in this path. I think obviously he could see that I was keen.
Is your sister keen? Can I ask?
She did do performing arts and things, but I think from my lifestyle and things like that, she's like, I'll focus on doing, because she does like plays around sort of work and stuff. But I think she likes to do it when she can, but I think at the same time, I think she's like, no, I'm happy with the 9 till 5 at the same time, type of thing, because she's just like, where are you next? I don't know where you are. You're here, you're there, sort of touring and stuff.
It takes a special kind of person to want to do that, though, doesn't it? I think to be a nomad, as it were, floating around. But I think it's either in you or it's not. You know what I mean? You want to do it. Finally, can I ask, is there a book or anything on your father? Have you thought about writing a book? Because I think people would love to know some of these stories, Danny.
A lot of people have asked me. There isn't a book, funny enough. No, I mean, I might look into it further in the future, as it were. I
mean, do you have a lot of pictures and things and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, on the website for the play, there's pictures of my dad with Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, and Margaret Thatcher, as well as Roy Castle and other like performers and things like that.
You love Margaret Thatcher. They got on very well, didn't they?
Yes, I think.
Which is great to think when you think, because now if you assigned yourself to anybody politically,
you
wouldn't
in
work.
Trouble.
Yeah.
No.
But at that time, she was iconic and remains iconic. But I thought it was nice that he supported her. Actually.
Well, it came about actually. He was doing a performance at the Savoy, and he was just doing his topical material. So whatever was about like the politics.
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, she sort of like left a note saying, "I want you to come to the conferences and do your material," and so from that they became sort of close friends in that aspect. And it was funny actually because she personally told him around 10 Downing Street and said, "Well, what do you think of it?" And she said, "Well, I'll tell you what, my mum's going to be thrilled. You've got the same wallpaper she's got in her bathroom." But it was nice because actually after my dad passed away, we actually got a letter from Margaret Thatcher saying that since my dad had come through sort of tough times and things, he set a great sort of legacy and a lesson for people to sort of keep going, as it were.
That's what I thought.
That was quite something in some respects.
I did read about the problems, but he paid his debtors and all that. I thought this was wonderful but that said to me, that's just old school grit. Like we don't want to give in but I think the show business gene is that, well, tomorrow's another day, somebody might call you, like a Danny Kaye or a Bob Hope or whatever, Well, you think that, don't you?
It was funny because towards the end, he did actually get a phone call from Jackie Mason, a very funny American comedian.
I love Jackie Mason,
saying that he wanted him to be a support act for when he toured in America.
Wow.
But sadly, he died before that could happen. But lucky enough, he did get the phone call.
Yeah, and that would have perked him up no end, wouldn't it? It would have been like, oh, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
And that could have turned everything around again. That's the thing about show business, isn't it? You don't get, I love this thing, but you don't give in show business. Even when you're retired, if somebody called you, you might just drag yourself out.
You still
do it again, why not? So tell us finally, where can we come and see Been and Gone? Where does it start?
So it starts at the Sweet Jukebox, which is inside the Southern Bell Pub, and it runs from the Monday the 7th till the Saturday the 12th of May, and it starts at 3 o'clock. Written by the Gate, Tom Glover.
All right.
Yeah,
and so you sat down with somebody and then they put it together?
Yes, so it came about because, as I said at the beginning, I had seen 2 sort of tribute shows in some aspects of Tommy Cooper and Morecambe, which is played by the great Eric Golding.
Yeah. And he's so like him, isn't he?
Yes.
It's frightening, isn't it? Yeah.
And then I saw another chap called Jack Lane who did Wisdom of a Fool, which was brilliant. And it kind of spurred me on to say, well, I would love to do a tribute to my dad, but sort of different. So we, the technician at my school, he sort of put a word about, and then we got in touch with a guy called Tom Glover, who sort of sat with me and chatted with me and said, okay, yes, we can sort of make this work. So it sort of came about, he would ask me questions, and then he sort of would type down what I said, and then he would kind of put it all together. And then we sort of workshopped it, and then it's sort of gone from there, really. It's been a long haul in coming, and we got a lot of support from people in crowdfunding, which thankful no end.
That's the modern age, though, isn't it? That's what I said about your dad. It's strange, isn't it? You wonder what they would think to things that we're doing, because they think, we'll do this now. No, you don't put a post ups on Twitter.
It's strange, yes, how it's all changed in that
But
aspect.
it all moves on because it all comes around, doesn't it? And I think ultimately, the reason why people will enjoy this is there's such affection for your father, but also I think people will be fascinated to know your life with him, because as you've just revealed a little bit here today, it must have been a wonderful time time, he sounded like a lovely father to you, and then nurtured you to become obviously the man you and the success you are today. I think.
Well, yeah, because obviously after he passed away, because of my mum's illness, she wasn't able to look after me. So I actually went into care, and then got foster parents who did, help and support me and put me into the right direction. So it's amazing the fact that, and that's what some people won't believe, is that you see a Saturday Night Favourite, and then you go, well, how does the son of Ted Rogers become in care, and how does that happen? And it just shows to people that you're not immune to these things. Anything can happen, yes. But I mean, at the same time, it's sort of come round in the fact that, he set a great legacy in the fact that, he's pointed me to the career that I've chosen now, and things have gone right for me now, and this is my chance to sort of pay tribute to the great man, really, in that aspect.
I'm sure I'll be very proud, Dan. It's been a real thrill to meet you today. Thanks so much
Andrew,
for
thank
being
you
my
very
guest.
much.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.